Well, good morning, everyone. It is a nice, chilly morning here in Zion, and yesterday was a decent day. Found some good subjects, exposed some film, and one of the things I found more toward the evening was some very interesting cracked mud, and it looked very, very good in the evening light, and I think it could very well get a little bit of morning light as well. So I'm going to head over there and see if I can find a composition for that scene. One other thing I'm doing a little different on this trip is I'm going very lightweight as much as possible. So I have my Chamonix Alpinist X camera with me, with my lightweight lenses, 4 film holders, and honestly, my backpack feels like it's almost empty. So that's a very welcome change. I initially purchased that camera more as a backpacking camera and also as kind of a backup camera, but I have a feeling that it's going to become more of a primary camera for me. Just definitely nice to take a little weight off. But I can head over to the mud and see if I can find a composition for it. So I went ahead and set up a composition with my kind of middle long lens, my 450 millimeter lens. And I'm just framing a shot of the dried mud down here. And right now the light is very flat. But what's going to happen is the sun is going to eventually hit this slope back behind me. And it's going to reflect some light down into the scene for some really nice dimensional light. And so I'm just going to sit in this composition for a little while and watch the light change. Now you'll notice that this tree back behind it is also beautiful, and I don't have that in the composition right now because I feel like it still needs a little bit more time. It has a little bit of an awkward fall color on it right now, but perhaps I'll photograph this scene again if these mud ripples are still looking really nice, when this has good color, if there's also some good light. So now it's just a waiting game. Well, I went ahead and exposed 2 sheets of Provia, and just as expected, the sun peeked over the distant sandstone formation there and is illuminating the wall behind me, which is now reflecting light into the shadows here. And the sun is coming through the maple tree there, and there's some little spotlights of light that are starting to appear in the foreground. So my window to photograph this scene has come and gone, at least until the evening time when it sees similar light. So feels pretty great to start off the day by exposing some film. And the weather today calls for blue skies and calm conditions for most of the morning, but then around 2 o'clock there should be some clouds. So I think it's time now to wander around a little bit and do a little more scouting and come up with a plan for the rest of the day. But it feels great to expose some film. Well, it is just after 2 p.m. and I've come here to the location of a potential photo, and it'll be in about an hour and a half or so. And it's this really interesting crack mud down here. It has this nice curved bias to it. It's very clean at the top, but very curled down at the bottom. And so I've got my camera set up there with my 450mm lens. And right now I'm just waiting for the light. And so many of these locations in Zion, you'll find a really cool subject, and then you have to ask yourself, when is the light going to be best on this? And in the case of this area, there's a slot canyon that goes back behind the camera here. And the sun is tracking across the sky, and at some point, right around 3 o'clock, the sun is going to peek out and it's going to illuminate this canyon where I am right now. And when that happens, you're going to have all this light bouncing around, and you have a nice glow to make a very dimensional photo right down there. So it's just kind of nice to arrive ahead of the light and then just to relax and to enjoy the location a little bit. And that's one of the joys of photographing here in Zion. But I've got a little over an hour to kill, which will go by in a flash. I'm just going to wander around a little bit and see what else we can find in the meantime. Well, I went ahead and exposed 2 sheets of Provia on that scene. And I gotta say, I've got mixed thoughts about the lighting. It seemed not as dimensional as I would have liked. And I think it's because a lot of the light was coming from the sand on the floor of the wash as opposed to bouncing off a canyon wall. So it was much stronger than the blue light from the sky. Because with reflected light that's bouncing off a canyon wall, you end up with this like warm, cool mix of light. And it really didn't have that. But also, Provia has a tendency to go slightly cool. So I really have no clue how that one's going to turn out. But now I'm going to head back to my truck. And there's another scene I stumbled upon yesterday, which has some direct light that spills into a slot canyon in the evening. And it's this really interesting glancing sort of light. So I'm going to see if I can set up a composition on that. We'll see what I can find. So I've arrived at my final subject for the day. And this is something that I stumbled upon yesterday as I was just out wandering around. And I found that at 5:24, the direct sunlight that you see back there on the floor of the canyon, it swings a little bit more toward the left and glances off that wall over there, while also sending some reflected light onto the other canyon wall. And so I got my camera set up there with my 240mm lens. And I'm going to expose a sheet of color negative film. And there's a very large dynamic range for the scene, but it's not so bad really because the bright spots are mostly backlit rocks or maybe sidelit rocks. And so it's not really important that they have detail there, since it's just really about the texture. But this is completely experimental, but I've got just a little bit of time left to go, and then I will expose my film. And after that, it will be dinner time, because I'm starved. So I went ahead and made my exposure, and I have no clue how this is going to turn out. This is definitely in the experimental category for sure. It's very interesting light, and it did not last very long. You can actually see behind me that the light has now vanished from the Slot Canyon floor there. And I exposed the film at the very moment that my lens was in shadow, because up until then the sun was pointing right at the lens. But I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. But sometimes the more experimental shots end up being kind of cool, and sometimes it's just a lesson learned in one reason or another. But time to get things packed up, head back to camp, get some dinner. I'm gonna have to load some film tonight, and that is not a bad thing at all. So, pretty good day.
I often speak of productivity in the field, though one can still feel productive while having little to show at the end of the day, as was the case for this day in particular. Of the 3 scenes I photographed, I can't say I'm satisfied with any one of them, though perhaps much of this has to do with my approach. All 3 of these subjects, and especially the final scene with the Slot Canyon, have one important thing in common. They're far better suited for black and white. This represents a shift in my choice of subjects, and it's definitely something to consider on future visits. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you around next time.
If you enjoy this ad-free and clickbait-free content and want to help me live my dream, a voluntary contribution of just $24 a year helps keep my gas tank full and my film freezer stocked. For more information on how to support me and my work, please visit the donation section of my website at benhorne.com/donate. I also have prints and my portfolio box set available on my website. You can find a direct link down below in the show notes. Thanks in advance for your support.